Good morning.
Good morning. Did it start?
Yes. The webinar has started. And so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're watching you all filter into the meeting and we will get started promptly at 9 o'clock. But thank you for being here and we're excited to share some information with you today.
Good morning, everyone. Now, I see that we have folks give just a moment to make sure everybody gets in. We understand that this is a very, very hot topic, and so we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to hear all that's going to be shared today. So it's allowing, as the numbers are coming up, allowing everyone to filter in before we get started.
And to answer a question I see in the chat regarding cameras, yes, it is my understanding that you will not be able to be on camera at this point. So cameras will be disabled for all.
And yes, another question we see here is, are you muted? Yes, this is a webinar, so you are muted. And Ms. Myrie will give instructions in terms of how we'll proceed once everybody is in the session. But you are muted. You have entered the session as muted.
Trying to wait for the numbers to slow down and jump in there. Just everybody just continuously popping in the room. So give another minute or two uh, to make sure everybody is in and can hear the same information at the same time. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're allowing a few minutes for everybody to enter the room. We know the size is pretty big, so we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to hear the same information at the same time. Okay, it looks like we may have leveled out on our numbers. So I'm going to take this opportunity to get started with today's webinar session. So again, welcome today's session on the interim final rule. My name is Sharice Myrie, and I'm Vice President of MH Miles Company. And we know this is a very important topic. MH Miles Company is a supportive services consultant for the Georgia Department of Transportation. So we work with several of your DBE firms that have joined us. Our firm itself is also a DBE. So we are looking forward to this discussion as you are. We will walk through the recent changes that affect the DBE certification and the steps that the Georgia UCP, both GDOT and MARTA, will take next. Just wanted to reference that in our announcement about today's webinar, we provided links to the interim final rule. We also provided links to the US DOT guidance and frequently asked questions, along with GDOT's letter to Federal Highway. And so if you did not have an opportunity to read up on those things before joining, I'm going to ask the MH Miles team to drop that in the chat. And so this is a perfect segue for me to introduce our team that is supporting this webinar today from MH Miles Company. We have Carol Phelps, who is our supportive services manager, Tony Miles, who also is a part of the MH Miles team with DBE certification and supportive services, Marcus DeMorin, who is also a part of the supportive services for a state-funded contract, along with Jada Miles, who is part of our team for DBE certification and provides support for state-funded contracts as well. So they're going to be working in the background to field your questions, make sure that we stay on track with our discussion today. And as part of the registration process, you had an opportunity to submit questions. And I will say that we received many thoughtful questions in advance. So our goal during this session is to go through those biggest themes within those questions live with you today. You will also have an opportunity to submit any remaining questions that you have. We'll provide a QR code at the end of the session. So you'll have an opportunity to submit any feedback and any additional questions that you may have. But we have received quite a few questions. We've given thoughtful consideration. The panelists have given thoughtful consideration in answering these questions. And so we're going to do so today as part of this webinar. So as part of logistics, as you can see, we are in fact recording this webinar, and you'll be able to access the recording at a later date. We'll work with the agencies to either distribute or post the recording and the slides for future reference. But our goal today is clear, and that is to understand what has changed and what that means for agencies and DBE firms and what the path looks like moving forward. We know that where there are things that there are definite answers to, you can expect to hear those answers today. And when there are things that are still in progress and being developed, you'll hear that as well. So with that said, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our speakers. And I did want to let you know, if you have questions as we go along, to please enter those questions in the questions box and try to reserve your chat messages for any technical problems that you may have. But we're going to be monitoring, the team will be monitoring both the chat and the Q&A. And so at this time, I want to introduce our panelists, which are our speakers for today. We have Kimberly King, who is the Equal Employment Opportunity Director for GDOT, and Paula Nash, who is the Assistant Manager of Corporate Compliance and Engagement for MARTA. And so we are so excited to have this discussion. It's a necessary discussion. And I want to invite the panelists just to take a few seconds to share one thing that you hope that firms will listen in for today. And I'll start with you, Kimberly.
Good morning. Thank you, Sharice. I would say the thing that I want folk to take away today is that we are all navigating this space together. The information that was shared with you on October 3rd, on or about October 3rd, is the same information shared with us on or about October 3rd. Our positions did not provide us any early intel. We didn't get any information before you got the information, so that we are clear that we are navigating this space together. We are working toward a solution together. We are firm in our belief that we are going to navigate this space in an orderly, an appropriate way in compliance with the language that we received in the interim final rule. And so hopefully when you leave here today, you are more informed than you perhaps were yesterday about what this new interim final rule means, what it looks like, how implementation will happen. Paula?
Yes, thank you, Sharice, for that introduction. I hope that what the DBE firms get out of this is just to not panic. We will all work through this together. As Kimberly said, we're here to help you work through this. We just got it like you all did, but we are dedicated and we are here to help. So do not panic. And this too shall pass.
Thank you so much for that. So, as you can see, and as was just mentioned, we all know that on October 3rd, USDOT issued this interim final rule. And I will bring Kimberly up now to pretty much talk about or summarize what has changed and why it matters. Kimberly?
Thank you, Sharice. So since 2002, right, I'm going to go back a little bit to go forward. Since 2002, MARTA and GDOT have been recognized by the United States Department of Transportation as the certifying agencies for the state of Georgia. GDOT is responsible for firms located all over the state in terms of certification, as well as the airport. MARTA, as our certifying partner, has been responsible for certifying firms that are located in Fulton, DeKalb, or Clayton County. So physically, if your firm was located in one of those three counties, MARTA was responsible for your certification. We have worked, these 20 plus years in that arena. I think we have become, expert at doing those certifications, at reviewing those annual no change affidavits that you would submit to us. The process, the program worked. We have staff that is very, very familiar with the federal regulations and what that requires of them. And so, we have been standing at the ready to continue doing this work. However, on October 3rd, 2025, the United States Department of Transportation, in response to an ongoing lawsuit that was filed in federal district court, complaining that the DBE program was violative of the Constitution, determined it appropriate to issue what they referred to as an interim final rule that said very specifically the presumption of disadvantage that had existed for ethnic minorities and females as it relates to the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program is no more. we are removing that presumption. And because the presumption has been removed, we will now require all currently certified disadvantaged business enterprises to describe their disadvantage as an individual. So, an individualized description of disadvantage must occur for firm owners who are currently certified as disadvantaged business enterprises. So, for us, the question became, how do we go about securing those individual statements of disadvantage, and what do we do with them? How does that look? What do we do in terms of reviewing those individual statements? The other thing that the interim final rule changed was DBE goal setting consideration. So, as you are all aware, we have a DBE program because we are the recipients of federal funds. And in response to those federal funds, we attach disadvantaged business enterprise goals to certain of our federally funded projects so that a portion of the expenditure of those federal funds is spent with disadvantaged business enterprises. Those goals, as it relates to those federally funded projects, were also impacted by the interim final rule. So the interim final rule indicated that you will set no goals, no DBE goals on your federally funded projects until such time as you have done the reevaluation that I talked about earlier in terms of that individual disadvantage, how those currently certified firms are going to express their individual disadvantage. That has to happen for all of your certified firms before you can again begin attaching disadvantaged business enterprise goals to your federally funded projects. For the Georgia Department of Transportation and MARTA, we have 4,000 plus firms in the directory that must be reevaluated, so that are subject to this reevaluation. So in terms of timing, I hope that gives you some indicator of what we're looking at in terms of the undertaking that we must do in terms of the reevaluation.
Thank you for that, Kimberly. So, as you know, we've received quite a bit of questions, and one of the things just that people want to know is the program going away? Are all the firms decertified?
So we received, and Paula, please feel free to jump in, but all of us, again, we all got this information at the same time. And so early on, all we had was the IFR, and we're sort of sitting around trying to interpret that interim final rule. What does this mean? How does that look? What's going to happen if? But later, a FAQ, a frequently asked questions list, was provided to us that helped to answer some of our questions. And one of the questions was, can a UCP simply decertify all currently certified DBEs without completing the reevaluation process? Answer, no. The interim final rule requires UCPs, MARTA and GDOT, to identify each currently certified DBE and provide each identified firm with the opportunity to submit documentation demonstrating its DBE eligibility under the standards described at 49 CFR Part 2667. So we have not decertified all the firms because the FAQs tell us that that is not the appropriate action to take.
Thank you. I think that puts a lot of us at ease because DB firms were wondering, okay, so we all decertified. We've heard from other states and some of them have taken that action. So we're glad that that was clear and that Georgia is definitely not doing that. And so with that being the case, for firms that are applying to the program for the first time, or for firms whose applications were in process when the IFR was issued, what happens with those firms?
I'll jump in here. Firms that are applying for the first time and aren't going through the recertification process, or the reevaluation process, this is just your first time. right now we have put your application on hold as we have been trying to figure out what to do, how to appropriately follow the interim final rule. So that application is on hold. We have gotten probably up to the point, if you've already submitted it, up to the point of maybe your on-site visit questionnaire, but we have held everything, at least Marta has, until we got some more guidance on when to start doing new applications again. I believe Presidents is going to take, the reevaluations will have the Presidents right now.
Okay, thank you for that. And what about interstate files? Received several questions about interstate certification. So what does that path look like for interstate DBEs if their home state is not Georgia?
So again, we are responding to a federal instruction. So the interim final rule came to us from the United States Department of Transportation, and the United States Department of Transportation gave us a set of instructions, if you will, for how we must go about reevaluating the currently certified firms and then any new firms seeking certification. And what they have said to us is that we are responsible for all reevaluations for those firms for which Georgia is what is referred to, used to be referred to as a home state. Now it's called the state of original certification. So if Georgia is the state of original certification for your firm, you are submitting any new documents for our evaluation to the Georgia UCP, that being MARTA or GDOT. If you are a firm certified in another state, you are subject to interstate certification at the Georgia UCP. You need to first secure that reevaluation from your home state before any interstate certification consideration will be provided to your firm.
Okay, so with that said, DBEs may be securing their um, home state certification as other agencies are moving forward with their process. Any idea from either of the UCP partners, GDOT or MARTA, on what that might look like once they do obtain that certification from their home state and then move forward to apply, for interstate certification in Georgia? Will it follow the previous process, that's been set forth for processing interstate applications?
We think so. Again, brand new. We know that our first charge, as Paula indicated in terms of precedent, is to reevaluate the existing firms that have a DBE certification through either MARTA or the Georgia Department of Transportation. That reevaluation must happen for those 4,000 plus firms for whom we are responsible. So before we can begin doing any interstate consideration, those 4,000 plus currently certified firms with Georgia as the state of original jurisdiction or original certification must happen first. I believe that all of our colleagues at state DOTs around the country are going through this same exercise. So they too are having to review their currently certified directory to determine how many firms there are and how many of those firms will be subject to reevaluation before we start looking at interstate consideration.
Thank you. Yeah.
I would like to add this in the question and answers from the USDOT also say that once you obtain your original recertification from the original jurisdiction, then for the interstate, you have to reapply. So it doesn't automatically happen. So remember that you got to reapply again if you want interstate with Georgia.
That's a great point, Paula, and hopefully our firms will take note, because I know with our firm, we're certified in several states as well. And so that's an important thing to highlight, that a new application for interstate will need to be submitted once you obtain your original, home state certification. So as we move on, this is where we uh, receive the bulk of our questions. I mean, tons of questions concerning the personal narrative. And so, as mentioned earlier, the federal guidance requires, a personal narrative that lays out specific barriers and how those barriers have caused economic harm, plus a personal net worth statement, and that the UCP is required to use this information for certification decisions going forward. So I'm gonna just have the panelists jump right in and talk about this personal narrative requirement and how it will be requested.
So again, on October 3rd, 2025, the bomb was sort of dropped in our laps saying, hey, we're changing this program as it is currently configured, and the expectation is for all of you to get on board with the change. And so we immediately began thinking about reevaluation in terms of implementation. What must that look like? And so we began collectively thinking, Paula and myself, as the United Certification Program for the state of Georgia, our partners at the city of Atlanta as the owners of the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, the team at the airport, all of us began working together, thinking together, talking together, collaborating about this personal narrative statement. How do we do that? What does that look like? What should it say? We did not want to reinvent the wheel. We did not want to, I said, traverse the dark side of the moon. We wanted to keep this as foundational as we could in terms of the work that we already do in terms of certification. And so we determined it appropriate to create a form that allows our currently certified disadvantaged business enterprises to describe for us their experience of disadvantage in the areas of academics or an educational setting, a business setting, and access to financial resources. We chose those areas, or those areas were chosen for us, probably is more of an accurate statement, because that's what's provided already in the federal regulation. In order to demonstrate disadvantage, you must be able to credibly describe how, in those three areas of American life, you have been disadvantaged. So we have created a personal narrative form that will allow you to describe that disadvantage in your own words. It is absolutely an individualized statement of disadvantage. And you then will submit that form to us for us to review and make a determination, much like we did on the certifications. When first you were certified, you were approved or denied based on the information that you submitted in your application. And in support of that application, this personal narrative is very much the same way. You will submit that information. You will submit a personal net worth statement along with that personal narrative. And we, again, MARTA and GDOT and our teams will review that information and make a determination of approval or denial of your firm as it relates to the new interim final rule regulation. We have been working with our IT team to make the form electronically available. And so when I say that we are working on the form and we will provide you the form, that form will be provided electronically when we have dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's with regard to your usability of that form, your ability to utilize that form electronically. We want you to be able to fill it out electronically. We don't want you to have to handwrite and submit it that way. We want it to be available to you electronically. So we need to make sure that that is done and that is done correctly, appropriately, in a user-friendly manner for us to get it to you.
Okay. And so with that, there are questions about documentation that may be required with the narrative. Is there going to be a requirement to submit supporting documentation to, accompany those narratives and illustrate disadvantage?
I'll
Paula?
jump in. Yeah, I'll jump in here. There's not a requirement for supportive documents, but you should do everything that you need to do to support or make your case that you are socially disadvantaged. And if that means providing supporting documentation, you will be able to upload that supporting documentation or attach that supporting documentation. So it's up to you, but my best advice is do what you need to do or what you feel best supports your personal narrative.
And so firms, as you know, are wanting to know what kind of support will be available. Will there be some templates or guidance provided? What exactly does it look like to illustrate disadvantage as part of this exercise? So, any thoughts on that? I know this is all new, and I've heard from several agencies, you'll know it when you see it, not quite sure, any thoughts on that?
Um, Again, to your point, Sharice, it's new. We did not receive a great deal of specificity, frankly, from the interim final rule or the FAQs. What we received is, and you have provided that information to the group in terms of making both the interim final rule itself and the FAQs available online so that you can see yourself as an audience member that there is limited specificity about what implementation should look like. We were not provided a set of instructions, a checklist that says this is a successfully submitted personal narrative. This is not a successfully submitted personal narrative. So we don't have that information. What we have is the federal regulation that says to us disadvantage can be demonstrated by sharing your experience in American life as it relates to these areas. That being in an academic environment, in a business environment, in a access to financial resources. So your ability to uniquely and individually describe your disadvantage in those areas of American life is what we are going to review and consider in making a decision about whether or not your firm can continue to participate in the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. The group that I talked about, myself, my colleague at MARTA, Paula, the City of Atlanta, and the airport did work together in putting together not only that personal narrative, but instructions in support of that personal narrative that, again, repeat those areas of consideration for us that talk about, what you need to include in your narrative in order to identify each of those areas. So, we are going to review your form upon receipt. And we're going to review that form in compliance with both the interim final rule, the FAQs, and the existing federal regulation. I can tell you that those are the things that we will use to supplement our review of your document. And that's probably as much detail as we have at present. Again, because the instruction that was provided is really limited to the instruction that is in the interim final rule itself and the FAQ, which says that you must do a reevaluation and you must do that reevaluation as quickly as is practicable. So the term reevaluation for us means to take a look at your personal narrative and make a decision.
Sounds like as quickly as practicable is pretty much the timeline. So as these narratives are coming in, each agency will be applying that, right? Currently there are no deadlines saying 30 days after you submit it, you should get a response or anything like that. But definitely understanding that you all will be working to ensure that it is done timely, thoroughly, and as accurate as possible with the information provided. One of the questions that we received had to do with how will the UCP know if the information is accurate? So, are they attesting to that in some way? Can you speak a little bit about the validating the information received?
Paula?
Sure. Yes, as you are putting in your information, as we get that information, the form itself will have you attest to the fact that it is in fact true and accurate information. That doesn't mean that you won't get some follow-up questions from us. What we know from experience of having done the original applications is sometimes we get answers and they're not that clear. So also part of my advice is please be concise and as clear as possible, but sometimes they aren't that clear. And so we do have to follow up sometimes and ask for clarification. So that is possible as well in helping us making sure that the information is accurate.
Okay. And I think that kind of segues into one of the questions about, is this going to be a one and done process, or will there be an opportunity for clarification to be provided along the way? So, yeah.
So yes, that answers that question. I won't say that there's clarification that's going to happen for everybody. It's clarification for when we need clarification.
Got it. And so, as it stands, is there any cutoff? Is there a latest date where personal narratives can be submitted as part of this process?
No, we have not made that determination in terms of a cutoff for our review. In fact, the FAQs give us that question. Can a UCP impose a deadline on currently certified DBEs for submission of the re-evaluation documentation as required under 49 CFR 26.111? Answer, no. The regulation at 49 CFR Part 26.111 does not provide a deadline for currently certified DBEs to submit documentation demonstrating its DBE eligibility under the new standards provided in the IFR. Firms that do not submit the necessary information, however, will remain ineligible for the DBE program until they submit the required documentation demonstrating DBE eligibility under the new standards.
Yes. Well, there you go, guys. So let's talk about this path forward, right? We just spent some time discussing the individualized narrative and what you can expect as this rolls out is that every current DBE will be asked to provide that personal narrative and a current and a personal net worth statement. And as Kimberly mentioned, they're working on the form in order to submit that. So I wanted to just, I know that each partner, MARTA and GDOT, have different submission processes. So while it's still being finalized, do you all envision uh, notifying firms that the form is now available And what will that look like, that notification look like respective to each agencies? Kimberly, you mentioned it would be a portal on the website. Can you just confirm, will the notice go out to all DBEs and directing them to the website to start that process? And then Paul, if you could share what it might look like for MARTA.
So this slide, this path forward slide is our thought process on paper, right? So again, Paula and myself, staff at the City of Atlanta, staff at the airport, we talked about, what must we do to get folk ready in terms of this reevaluation, because that's the language that is provided to us by the interim final rule. So the first thing that's going to happen is that individualized narrative that everyone who is currently certified must submit this personal narrative form to us for our review. And so that individualized narrative is the document that I've been talking about. We're working with our IT staff to get ready to provide electronically. The commissioner has instructed us to make that form available online. So on our Disadvantaged Business Enterprise page on the GDOT website, there will be a statement with a notice that the personal narrative form is required and is now available. And when you click on, this is how we envision it working. When you click on that personal narrative form, you will get a question that asks if your firm was originally certified through MARTA or through GDOT. If you click MARTA, your firm should take you to a MARTA site that allows you to submit the personal narrative there. If you click GDOT, the click should take you to a GDOT site that allows you to submit there. So that's the part that we are working on in terms of having that available to you electronically for you to work on that way. And our objective will be to send a notification to every firm that is currently in the GDOT directory, just sort of a constant contact, much like you got notification for this meeting, that you are now able to go to the website to review and submit if you choose to that personal narrative form. This is where it's located. So once we have that form ready to go, we will send that notification and the form will be available online on GDOT's website for you to go to, or on MARTA's website for you to go to. We're both working on how we're going to make that form available to you. Paula?
Yes. So those of you all who are certified through MARTA, you're already familiar with our portal, our vendor management system portal. That's the same portal you use for obtaining your certification. It's the same one you use annually to update your, to do your annual renewals. It's the same one that we're pushing out information from that portal. That portal is where you will go into. So you're used to going into that portal, you'll go into there, and that form that Kimberly just mentioned will be there for you. And so that is how you will go in and actually do your personal narrative, as well as submit your personal network statement. You will receive the notices. So when we're ready and when everything is available, you will also receive the notices from that portal as well, because it does our outreach. But we will also put that information on MARTA's website for you also.
Yes, and as Kimberly mentioned, this slide just illustrates what the path forward kind of looks like, right? So that outside of that personal narrative, there's going to be a requirement for staff support and training internally to ensure that everybody is on the same page. And I know that that has been touched on since the onset of this session. To either of the panelists, any additional information you want to share about staff support and training that needs to take place to, implement this process?
I think that we just want to assure the audience that my staff here at GDOT that is responsible for the reevaluation process, Paula's staff at MARTA that's going to be responsible for that process, our supportive services team that's going to be assisting with that process. We want to make sure that we are all looking at the same thing in the same way, with the same considerations in terms of making an approval or denial decision to the personal narrative form that you provide to us. So when we talk about staff support and training, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about making sure that each of those team members is in the room together having this discussion about expectations for approval or denial. We will rely on the interim final rule itself, on the FAQs in support of that interim final rule, and the federal regulations to ascertain for ourselves what an approval or a denial should look like. We will, sort of sit in the room together, make sure that we are creating a system that will allow each of us to do that review in a manner that is consistent and compliant with the federal rule. And we will then make our decision about approval or denial based on those lessons that we all learn together as we are assessing how to go about making that approval or denial decision. So when we say staff support and training, that's what we're referring to. We are referring to each of the team members having the necessary information to consistently review the personal narrative forms that you are providing to us so that we are able to get those approval or denial decisions to you once we have completed our assessment and review. Paula, would you add anything to that?
No, I think you have covered that quite well.
Okay. And
Thank
so,
you.
yeah, I think that we know that there's going to be an outcome, right? So after that evaluation is done, that consistent, timely review is completed, there'll be a clear outcome, eligible or ineligible. And so with that decision, if there are firms that are ineligible or denied, if you will, how will they need notified? And what is the appeal process?
So we will certainly notify the firms of our decision, much like, I believe, the letter that they get now that says, congratulations, your firm has been certified as a disadvantaged business enterprise. I think that we will send that same sort of letter. Congratulations, your firm has been determined eligible to continue in the disadvantaged business enterprise program based on the new instruction that we received as of October 3rd, 2025, so that we are making clear that this certification is based on the new eligibility rules. Because, again, the interim final rule and the FAQs make very clear that the objective is to have firms be certified based on the new rule. And so we want to make clear that it is the new rule under which we are evaluating the firm. So we will send a letter of approval or denial of that personal net worth. If, in fact, there is a denial of your personal narrative, I'm sorry, I said personal net worth, of your personal narrative form, you have the right to appeal that denial of your personal narrative. So again, question from the FAQ, can a firm that is decertified through the reevaluation process appeal the decision to DOT? Answer, yes. A firm that is decertified under the reevaluation procedures described at 49 CFR Part 26.111 is entitled to appeal the decertification to DOT under the procedures described at 49 CFR Part 26.89. So if we issue a denial of your reevaluated criteria, we will send you notification of that denial that will include the language here regarding appeal under 2689.
Thank you. So, we received several questions concerning contract goals and the DBE database as well. But before we try to address those questions, two other questions as it relates to the personal narrative, I think we can address before for transitioning there. One would be, how far back does one reach about in that personal narrative? And the second part is this a narrative for each owner of the company when it's being submitted? So whoever would like to tackle that.
So I'll jump
Well,
in here. Um, so how far back you go is, again, this is a very individualized assessment or a personal narrative that you're doing. So what you're covering, and I'm going to quote some of what's coming from the IFR, we're looking for specific incidents of economic hardship, systemic barriers, and denied opportunities that are impeded the owner's progress on success in education, employment, or business. Only you know how far back that goes or when that happened. So we don't have a time period that says, oh, you can only express what has happened in the last 5 years. It's when it happened. That's what you want to express. So that covers that part. The second part of the question was,
Had to do with who submits that narrative. Is it every owner of the business?
it's the 51% owner or more owner of the business. So if it's the owner that the DBE certification was based on. So your original certification was based on an owner, and it's that owner that needs to submit it.
Or a group of owners that make up that 51%?
51%.
Or group, yes.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. So, like I said, we had several questions related to contracts and goals, as well as, the DBE database itself. And so we'll just try to tackle a couple of those during our remaining time. So since recipients can't set DBE goals until the reevaluations are completed, um, will the UCP hold primes to comply with their existing legal contracts with DBEs that are in place currently?
So again, the interim final rule and the FAQs in support of the interim final rule do provide us some instruction as it relates to the DBE goal setting process relative to the projects on which goals may have been set. So the frequently asked questions, the FAQs, as it relates to the projects that are federally funded and that therefore have a goal attached to them, have some pretty specific directives provided to us by the FAQ. So what it says is if the project was executed and has a DBE goal attached to it, that project can move forward, but the DBE goal will not count toward overall participation for the agency because we are not submitting that documentation to the Federal Operating Administration. If the contract was awarded but not executed prior to October 3rd, we must issue what are called supplemental agreements to remove the goal from that project, and must sort of record the existence of those supplemental agreements so that the Federal Operating Administration is aware that we have complied with their rule in that manner. And if the projects have been advertised but not let, then the goal will be removed from the project. So the FAQs give us some instruction about expectations for how we are to evaluate those federally funded projects that have or had a goal attached to them. So I would certainly refer the audience to the FAQ document. They can see for themselves how that goal setting activity is described in the FAQ. But I thought they did a pretty good job of providing some detail at that part.
Yeah, so it addresses those contracts that are awarded, those that are under consideration. I would agree. With that being said, um, GDOT has some state-funded contracts that have goals on them. Will this process or this interim final rule affect opportunities for DBEs or goals associated with those state-funded projects?
They will not. So again, DBE is a federal construct. So the interim final rule that we received from the United States Department of Transportation is about those federally funded contracts and projects for which the DOT, GDOT is responsible. But as you said, Sharice, we also have state-funded projects. So projects, contracts that are funded with state money are not impacted by the federal rule. So on those projects, we have what are called SV DBE goals. So those projects are ones where we are trying to meet a goal that we have attached as an agency with a small business, with a veteran-owned firm, or with a firm that had been certified previously as a disadvantaged business enterprise. So we continue to review those project types for goal setting opportunities.
Okay. And so, as I mentioned, in addition to the contract questions and the questions related to the goals, we did receive questions related to the DBE database itself. And one of those questions is, will the DBE database start over from scratch? What do we think that's going to look like? So as this reevaluation process is taking place, do you envision it to remain the same, but firms being labeled as eligible or not eligible, starting over from scratch? What are your thoughts on that?
I think again, I don't, we don't always have a definitive response because we've not received, if you will, a definitive response from the Federal Operating Administration. But again, the FAQ provides the question, can a UCP simply decertify all currently certified firms without completing the reevaluation process? And the answer is no, that we must go through that reevaluation process for each currently certified DBE. So it feels like what that means is, those 4,000 plus firms that are currently certified must be subject to a reevaluation. That reevaluation, from our perspective, is being done with the submission of a personal narrative. So as we approve or deny the personal narrative, I think we then create a directory that removes the firms who have been denied and allows those firms that are eligible under this new consideration to remain certified. So I'm not sure as we sit here, and I think this is something that we probably will talk more about, Paula and myself, as the uniform certification program, if we leave the original directory and just start removing, or if we create a new directory and say this directory has been sort of phased out because we're now using this directory. So those firms are still there. We haven't decertified everybody because we haven't gotten to reevaluate everybody. But we know that these firms that have been subject to the reevaluation have been determined eligible under that reevaluation criteria. I think that's probably how it will look, but as I sit here today, I don't know that I have a definitive answer to that question.
That's fair. Yeah, one of the other questions that we received was about the annual no change affidavit, if that's still going to be necessary, and how do you envision that working, considering all these new things?
So the annual affidavit of no change, ANOC, is now referred to as the Declaration of Eligibility. So we receive still those declarations of eligibility, and I think we probably will continue to do so. Once you are determined eligible for program participation under the new certification standards, you are now an eligible DBE firm, so you must continue to declare yourself eligible as a DBE firm. So that annual update that you provide either to GDOT or MARTA should continue to happen. I don't think that process will change. Paula, would you add anything to that?
No, I would agree. I don't see anything in the IFR that changes that part of the law that was already there. So I would say, yes, you will continue to have to submit the declaration of eligibility on an annual basis.
Okay, and then will that begin from your recertification date or your original date, or is that still being worked out?
I think we're still working that part out. So you will definitely get notifications of when that date is, but I think that's the part that we're still working out.
Yeah, I agree. It feels like, you're sort of a new creature under the interim final rule, that they are requiring something different in terms of certification eligibility. And so if we're going to say that you've got to be reevaluated, then we're going to reevaluate you on that new criteria and make a determination based on that new criteria. Can we then use your existing date of certification, your sort of annual date? I don't know. I'm not sure what that looks like. So I think I would agree with Paula that we're probably going to have to give that some more thought. I don't know that we have all of those answers at this moment.
Understood, understood. And so, one other question, I'm going to navigate to the QR code because I know we've got questions coming in, and we've
Okay.
answered quite a few of them, and want to give people an opportunity if they have additional questions for us to capture that. But we did we're really, thoughtful in addressing those larger themes that we received when people registered. One of the questions that we did receive was about if a firm is denied, um, you know, during this reevaluation process and is participating on a contract, what does it mean for that contract?
Oh, I'll jump in and address that. It is addressed in the question and answer that we got from the USDOT, but what it says is if a DBE currently performing on a contract is not recertified under the new standards, the recipient, which would be whichever agency is using it, must take appropriate measures to discontinue the effect of the unconstitutional certification, whatever that means. So I think we're still feeling our way through that, but it sounds like that firm may have to come off of the contract, but that is something that we're still feeling our way through. But what we have been directed to do is discontinue the effect of unconstitutional certification in those instances.
Agreed. I think the interim final rule itself provides that the new rule ensures that existing firms do not continue to receive any benefits as a result of their certification under the old standards. Do not continue to receive any benefits. To me, that's like a really, really clear statement. If you were certified under the presumptive disadvantage rule, we do not want you to continue to benefit from that presumption. And so to allow your participation to count on a project that was issued prior to October 3rd when the change happened would be allowing you to continue to benefit. And I think that they clearly don't want that benefit, what they describe as a benefit, to continue. So it feels like, yeah, we would have to remove that participation consideration.
I must say that we're all just still figuring this out together for sure. So
Agreed.
there's definitely more to come, as information is provided, additional guidance is provided, then we'll be sure and intentional about communicating that with all the DBEs here in Georgia. When it comes to the personal net worth statements, I know 8A went through a similar type of thing when it came to updating requirements for their program. How do you all envision accepting those statements that were submitted for the 8A program for the DBE program here in Georgia?
So the personal net worth statement that we use has not changed. And so we are actually going to attach that personal net worth statement to the personal narrative form so that the firms submitting the personal narrative understand that the personal net worth statement is a part of that personal narrative form. So we are looking for you to add that personal net worth form, to fill it out in its entirety, to offer us information in that form that supports the personal narrative document.
And then for those personal narratives that were submitted to 8A, with the changes in their program, do you envision that those same narratives, I'm not sure if you all looked at their form, but would be acceptable or something that firms could, in fact, submit for this new process?
So the personal net worth form that we use is that which has been approved by the Fed. So we're using that same form. And I'm saying that, Sharice, because I see a question saying that the federal government has a personal net worth. That's the form we're using. We haven't created a new form. That may not have been your question.
Yeah, no, I'm referring to the narratives. So the narratives that are submitted to the 8A program to demonstrate disadvantage,
Mhm.
those same narratives, do you envision that firms could use those for this process?
I think that both of our agencies, both entities are looking for the same thing, a credible description of your personal experience of disadvantage. So if your 8A narrative describes credibly that individual disadvantage, I don't know why we couldn't use them as long as, again, the descriptors are as provided in the form that we give you. That is an academic environment, a business environment, access to financial resource. If those are the elements described in that other narrative, I should think that it would work for our purposes as well. Paula?
Yes, I would agree. Well, let me say this. Look at what we provide and what we're asking for compared to what 8A asked for, but I think they're going to be very similar. So I would say you could probably use this same narrative, but again, you want to, review it and add any extra information based on the specifics that we're asking for, if it need be.
Thank you. So I'm gonna I know we allotted an hour for this session and we appreciate those that have hung in there with us. I'm gonna just check in with the MH Miles team and I guess Tony specifically as you guys are scouring through the Q&A and the chat, if we've pretty much covered um most of the inquiries, or if there are some that we just did not have an opportunity to address as we are approaching 10 after the hour. If you could just let us know where we stand and if we have time for any additional questions or if it's necessary.
No, I think you all did a great job. The main questions were about where will the forms be available? Will the firms be notified? You've addressed all of those. And then related to DBE interstate certification. So again, Kimberly stated, and as well as Paula, that you have to be recertified in your home state first, but you also then, once that happens, will have to apply for the other states to be recertified in those additional states that are not your jurisdiction of original certification. But no, you've covered in general terms what are the three categories. It's the academic, it's the business environment, financial resources, kind of those, all of the questions were in that same vein. So you've pretty much hit those questions. And I'll ask Jada as well as Marcus if y'all have seen anything other than that is a pressing thing, but you've hit all of the major points.
Oh, just like Tony had mentioned, there were those questions you guys covered those and you answered them. So again, they were just asking when the form was going to be available, and of course, Kimberly has stated that they're working on that, and when it is available, they'll be reaching out to the DBEs to let them know when they can start sending in their personal narratives.
Thank you for that. And I will just reiterate that the session was recorded. We will work with both MARTA and GDOT on distributing the recording and the slides, although the slides were pretty general, so the recording will provide that additional context if you want to refer back to it in the future. And we'll probably send it out via email to all the registered participants. Not sure if it'll be posted on the websites, but we'll be sure to get it to everyone. Again, on the screen, I believe, is the QR code. If you do have some additional feedback or questions that you feel are more individual to your case that you'd like to share or ask. So we invite you to scan that code and to do that um, at this time. And is there any closing comments from the panel? We definitely appreciate your time. This has been a huge undertaking. We know that you've been inundated with developing processes and things to get us to where we need to be with the program in Georgia. So I'll turn it over to you for any final comments.
So I think I will end where we began, and that is that this is new to all of us. We are navigating this information together. Paula indicated early on that please don't panic, and I think we certainly want to leave you with that mantra. Please don't panic. We are absolutely working through the interim final rule and trying to be compliant with that interim final rule. I saw one of the comments say, appreciate your statements and your support, but you can't give us anything definitive. That's true. We cannot, because we have not been given anything definitive. We are making every effort to implement the interim final rule instructions as they had been given to us. And the most definitive statement that we received is that the existing firms must be re-evaluated. We had to determine what that re-evaluation should look like. And so that's what we have done with the creation of the personal narrative form and the instructions in support of same. And the other thing that I would say is that many of my responses to you today were read directly from the interim final rules FAQ. So I would suggest perhaps that you too take a look at that FAQ. It's divided into sections, and section B, contracting questions, the very first question there goes through those goal setting exercises. Is it an executed contract? Is it an advertised contract? Is it a not yet advertised or executed contract? So it gives you that kind of specificity. So there are some places where that detail we talked about is provided, and I would suggest perhaps that you spend some time with those documents in support of those questions that you might have that perhaps we did not answer or did not answer to your satisfaction.
I agree with Kimberly. I, I want to thank everybody for allowing us to have this opportunity to be able to talk to you about these very important things. And I'm glad that we had such a big turnout. I would reiterate what Kimberly said. There seemed to be still a lot of questions or maybe some confusion about contracting. And so, yes, looking at the FAQs that are, I think we've put them in the chat or they're already out there, but please look at that because it does break down every scenario so that you'll know what is happening with contracts. Other than that, we have provided our contact information, so definitely feel free to contact us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I
just
want to say one more thing, Cherise.
Sure,
I
sure.
comment about perhaps another session would be useful. The intention is for us to do this again in person once the personal narrative form is available electronically and we start receiving some of those and reviewing some of those. We can talk more practically and specifically about our experience in receipt and review. And so we do intend to do this again in person. I think that we might have to have an electronic virtual session also. So the in person will be in person and virtual. It'll be hybrid because we might not be able to get everybody in the same place at the same time. If we do it here at GDOT, which is the anticipated location here at 600 West Peachtree Street Northwest in Atlanta, Georgia. So we do plan to do it again just in response to that suggestion. We plan to do it in person and virtually. So there'll be a hybrid session to come.
Thank you for those closing remarks and
You're very welcome.
and the address, no less. So if the MH Miles Company team will go ahead and pop in the chat those resources one more time that have been referenced throughout today's webinar, the link to the interim final rule, the link to USDOT's guidance and FAQs, as well as the link to GDOT's letter to the Federal Highway Administration. That way, firms will be able to take the opportunity to take a look at that information and filter what you've heard, filter that through what you've heard today. And if you have any final or lingering questions, feel free to reach out. We will distribute a copy of the slides along with a link to the recording to all registered participants. So you'll be able to reference it at a future time. Thank you again so much for joining us this morning, and also be aware that we're having the same type of session with prime contractors and consultants so that they are too aware of what the expectations are, as well as local governments. So we're all working together to ensure that everyone is hearing the same message and singing to the same sheet of music as we navigate these changes to the DBE program. So with that said, have a fantastic week this week, and we look forward to any additional feedback or questions you may have that may be submitted through our QR code. So have a wonderful day.